It has been a recent trend of Hollywood to be extremely unoriginal when it comes to horror. Remakes are aplenty, particularly in the slasher subgenre, and any original ideas quickly get milked with endless sequels to the mocking of that film series and popular culture. Of course, while there are good examples of horror remakes such as Evil Dead, which turns out to not be a remake exactly, the plague of bad horror remakes are endless. But what makes them bad? Now again, I'll start off by saying that an adaptation should be a good film first and a good adaptation second. The Shining was an awful adaptation, but a terrific film, so I would be able to forgive these remakes if they were good films as a whole. They just aren't, and betray so much of what the originals were good at that they are both bad films and remakes altogether. I'll be focusing on the slasher genre here in particular. Let's start off with the killers. First off, let's just ignore the fact that they turned Michael Myers into Jason Voorhees, Leatherface into Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger into Batman, and Jason Voorhees into an electrician. There are two big problems with remakes' portrayal of them. First off is the movie studios seem to think that the killer's the most interesting character, hence giving them the most screen time and backstory. But giving them a backstory removes what made the characters so interesting and so scary in the first place. Rather than giving them an ambiguous, unexplanatory, and effective opening backstory like that of Halloween, they gave Michael Myers such a cartoony backstory that takes half the movie, with a cardboard cutout abusive father, a cardboard cutout stripper mother, and a cardboard cutout whorish sister. Also, he kills animals. This remake tries to show Michael Myers to be a sympathetic character, but he's also a bad seed from the start. Not only does this shit all over what the original was so scary about because you knew nothing about Michael Myers, he was just a normal kid that one day snapped, it fails at making the character scary because of a generic and cartoonish backstory that tries to make you feel sorry for the person that later murders people. It doesn't help that in other horror movie remakes, they try to say that Leatherface is just misunderstood, and in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, they shoot the flashback to when Freddy is burned in such a way that tries to make it seem tragic when it's already been established that he's a paedophilic child murderer. It's failed to do what was summed up in the original in one sentence. This leads to the protagonist of the film. I would call them the main character, but for some reason the filmmakers seem to forget that the normal people can be interesting and give them a backseat to the killer. What I hate about these movies is pretty much what I hate about a lot of modern horror movies. There's no likable protagonist or other main characters. Remember when the original Laurie Strode? She was kind, compassionate, caring, and was pretty much completely innocent until the forces of evil came upon her. You know, the one you cared about? Well, in this version, she's a loud, ditzy, vulgar, crass, and slutty person that you do not care for in the slightest and you just want to see die. Of course, irritatingly, you never do. What made horror movies scary for me was a connection with the main characters, growing to care about them, and the scary aspect was from wanting someone you like to get out alive, but they never do. I couldn't care less about a slutty Laurie or a boring characterless Nancy that shows so little emotion it would make Kristen Stewart cringe. The filmmakers just seem to see the protagonist and the friends as bags of blood to be killed off. These movies failed not only as adaptations but as films too. Even if I had never seen the originals, I doubt I could bring myself to like a film where the protagonists are so unsympathetic and the antagonists are so sympathetic and unscary that you are actually made to root for them. The point of a horror movie is to root for good in adversity of evil, and the scary part is putting yourself in the shoes of the main characters and wanting them to succeed. Modern horror and these remakes seem to have the delusion that scares come solely from gore and jumps. Not only do they fail to live up to the original, but they suffer from what makes horror films nowadays so bad, which for me is why these movies fail.